Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that the Hong Kong China Temple was the first temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to be built in China, and that more than 13,000 people toured the temple before it was dedicated? Learn that 500 distinguished guests and 25 ministers of other faiths were welcomed before its dedication, and that now the Hong Kong China Temple serves about 25,000 church members from many countries and islands across Asia and the Pacific.
Imagine you are the leader of a global faith, and you need to build a permanent, highly sacred sanctuary.
Right.
One that's going to serve tens of thousands of people across multiple different countries.
Yeah.
But the catch is, you have to build it on this tiny, incredibly expensive plot of land in Hong Kong.
Oh, and you only have just a few months to finish it.
Exactly. You have to finish it right before the entire territory is handed over to a completely different communist government. So how do you do it?
It's a massive challenge.
It really is. Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you. Today, we aren't just looking at the aesthetics of a building. We are unpacking a masterclass in historical timing, structural innovation, and honestly, global community building.
Yeah, it's a remarkable case study. And to explore this, we are pulling from a really fascinating stack of sources today.
What do we have?
Well, we have historical excerpts from Latter-day Sanctuary. We've got deep dive insights from the Religious Studies Center and official church records, plus articles detailing the massive geopolitical shifts in East Asia, including some great reporting from the New York Times.
Awesome.
And when you layer all these documents together, you see that the story of the Hong Kong China Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, well, it transcends architecture entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have this building.
Yeah.
Right? And it's sitting in the quiet residential district of Kowloon Tong, which is a suburb of Hong Kong.
Yeah, beautiful area.
And it was dedicated by President Gordon B. Hinckley over 2 days, May 26th and 27th of 1996. They actually held 7 different dedicatory sessions.
Which is a lot of sessions for a single weekend.
Right. And prior to that, they had an open house that brought in over 13,000 visitors. And that guest list, it wasn't just, local members of the faith.
Oh, not at all.
It included 500 distinguished guests, and get this, 25 ministers from entirely different religious traditions.
See, that open house attendance is really your first indicator of the specific role this building was meant to play.
How so?
Because you don't invite 25 ministers of other faiths if you are just trying to set up an insular private clubhouse,
Right. Now that makes sense.
You do that when you're intentionally establishing a public, permanent cultural dialogue with the city. But to understand the true weight of that May 1996 dedication, we have to look at the atmosphere in Hong Kong at that exact moment.
Because the timeline here is essentially a geopolitical thriller.
Exactly.
When those temple doors opened, Hong Kong was still under British rule, but everyone knew the clock was ticking.
Ticking very loudly.
Yeah. Just over a year later, on July 1st, 1997, sovereignty-like, the absolute ruling authority over the territory transferred from Britain back to China.
Right.
And building a major spiritual landmark right before a monumental transfer of government power. I mean, it's like setting up a permanent embassy while the host country is in the middle of changing its name and its constitution.
That's a really good way to put it.
You are aggressively putting down roots in soil that is actively shifting right beneath your feet.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you see that the church was operating with a very calculated multi-generational strategy.
Meaning they saw this coming.
Yeah, this temple wasn't just some reactionary move to the handover. It was actually the culmination of a roadmap that had been in place for decades. The roots of this specific event, they stretch all the way back to January 9, 1921.
1921. And the location of that 1921 event is what makes it so incredibly strategic.
Tell them where it was?
So Elder David O. McKay, who was then an apostle, he dedicated mainland China for missionary work from inside the walls of the old Forbidden City in present-day Beijing.
Which is just an incredible image.
Right. Now, dedicating mainland China from within the imperial heart of the nation, that wasn't just a spiritual gesture. It was a massively ambitious geopolitical stake in the ground.
Oh, absolutely. especially during a period of intense Chinese political fragmentation. It was a declaration of permanent intent. And that intent was reinforced decades later. On July 14th, 1949, Elder Matthew Cowley officially opened Hong Kong for missionary work, and he did it alongside a Chinese native named Henry Aki.
So the foundation was laid way early.
Exactly. So by the time we arrive at the mid-1990s, the anxiety of the 1997 handover is causing massive brain drain, like capital flight out of Hong Kong.
People were panicking.
Yes. But the church takes the exact opposite approach. They double down. They build this highly visible temple to signal to their members and, frankly, to the surrounding government that they aren't going anywhere.
But, knowing you want to stay in Hong Kong and actually finding the physical space to build a massive temple, those are two very different problems.
Very different.
Which brings us to the physical reality of the city itself. The constraint wasn't just the impending political transition. It was the absolute crushing lack of available land.
The extreme land scarcity in Hong Kong completely dictated how this temple had to be built. I mean, it forced a total evolution of the church's traditional architectural blueprint.
Because usually when you think of a temple, it involves a sprawling, isolated campus.
Right. Big lawns.
Yeah, acres of manicured lawns, sweeping driveways, a building set far back from the noise of the city to intentionally create a sense of sacred retreat.
Which you just cannot do in Kulin Thom.
You can't. So how do you maintain a sense of sacred retreat when you are forced to stack a chapel, administrative offices, and living quarters all on top of each other? It's like building a spiritual Swiss Army knife.
What's fascinating here is how the leadership navigated that exact problem, because the traditional model was financially and physically impossible in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And the sources document that President Hinckley was actually on a trip to Hong Kong specifically to locate a viable temple site.
Okay.
And confronted with the immense cost and just the complete lack of acreage, he received direct inspiration for a new kind of location. And he personally sketched out the design on a piece of paper.
Wait, let me stop you there, because that is an incredible image.
It really is.
The worldwide leader of the church looks at the zoning constraints, realizes the traditional blueprint is useless, and just sketches the architectural solution himself.
Yeah. He essentially invented a brand new category of religious architecture for the church right there. Because of that sketch, Kulin Thom became the site of the church's very first multi-purpose temple.
And the specifications of what they crammed into that space are wild.
Oh, yeah. Tell us about the specs.
We are talking about a 6-story building with a total footprint of just 21,744 square feet.
Which is tiny for everything they put in there.
Exactly. Inside that highly condensed vertical space, they housed the temple itself, a standard meeting house chapel for weekly Sunday worship, a mission office to coordinate regional operations, and actual living quarters for the temple president and several missionaries.
To understand how radical this is, think of it like a spiritual lock system on a canal.
Okay, I like that.
You enter the building at the bustling, chaotic street level of Hong Kong. And as you move up through the building, floor by floor, past the administrative offices, past the communal chapel, the noise of the city is systematically filtered out.
Wow.
Yeah. By the time you reach the highly restricted sacred space of the temple at the upper levels, you have achieved that necessary sense of isolation and peace. But you've done it vertically instead of horizontally.
They took a horizontal campus and literally squeezed it into a high-rise. Yet, reading through the sources, it's clear they completely refused to sacrifice the aesthetics.
Oh, it's a beautiful building.
The exterior is deeply intentional. It was heavily inspired by Hong Kong's colonial architecture. It features these striking vertical glass columns and beautifully ornamented exterior walls.
Right.
They even managed to engineer an enclosed outdoor water feature on the grounds. So they created this tiny oasis of tranquility right in the middle of a dense urban grid.
And the capstone to that aesthetic, which is also another bold public statement, was the addition of the Angel Moroni statue.
Oh.
On December 12th, 1995, several hundred spectators gathered to watch that statue be hoisted up and placed on top of the building.
That must have been quite a sight.
Imagine it. In a city defined by its towering commercial skyline, planting a gleaming religious statue on a rooftop is a very visible declaration of presence.
So, we have this incredibly efficient, vertically stacked building doing the work of an entire sprawling campus. But a building performing this much multitasking isn't just serving a local neighborhood.
Not at all. No, the geographic footprint this building supports is staggering. The Hong Kong China Temple serves approximately 25,000 church members.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because those 25,000 members, they are spread across a massive portion of the globe.
Yeah, it's not just Hong Kong.
Right. The Temple District includes parts of India, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Mongolia, Guam, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Cambodia, Micronesia, the Marshall Islands, and Indonesia.
It's a huge area.
How does a single six-story building handle the cultural, logistical, and linguistic translation for a dozen different nations?
Well, it requires hyper-vigilant local coordination, obviously. But more importantly, it requires strict adherence to some very complex geopolitical rules.
Especially concerning China, right?
Exactly, especially concerning members interacting with mainland China. The church is meticulously careful about how it operates within the boundaries set by the People's Republic of China.
Yeah, they have to be.
For example, the sources note that missionaries are explicitly forbidden from proselytizing in China, outside of Hong Kong and nearby Macau.
And even if you are already inside mainland China, proselytizing is strictly limited to private settings or within officially registered houses of worship.
Right.
But the logistical rules for the members themselves are even more granular than that.
Yeah.
The official guidelines state that church members from Hong Kong, Macau, or Taiwan who are living or working in China can attend local church meetings.
Okay.
However, if a member from Hong Kong, Macau, or Taiwan travels to China merely for business or tourist purposes, they are mandated to attend church meetings, specifically with foreign members.
Right. That distinction is super important.
Wait, I'm actually a bit confused. Why would the church enforce such a granular, specific rule separating tourists from locals? I mean, isn't the whole point of a global faith to worship together regardless of where you are from?
Well, from a purely theological standpoint, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But from a geopolitical survival standpoint, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The Chinese government is highly sensitive to unregulated foreign influence blending with domestic religious practice.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so if tourists and short-term business travelers are constantly dropping into local Chinese congregations, it blurs the line between a domestic religious community and an international network.
That makes total sense.
So by strictly self-regulating, by separating temporary foreign visitors from permanent local members, the church actively protects its local Chinese congregations from government scrutiny. They are proving they can operate within the legal boundaries of the PRC.
They are prioritizing the long-term safety of the local members over the short-term convenience of a visiting tourist. And despite those strict geographic boundaries on missionary work, the influence of the PRC is still massive. Many individuals from the People's Republic of China have actually joined the church while living abroad.
Yes.
Because of this, Chinese language congregations have sprouted up globally across the Chinese diaspora.
Yeah, the global reach is undeniable. But, while the global reach of this temple is vast, if we zoom back in on the local congregations actually walking into that building in Kowloon, we find a completely unique community dynamic.
Oh, definitely.
The sources provided a demographic detail about the Hong Kong congregations that is highly unusual.
Yes, this stood out immediately to me. The sources explicitly state that Mormon congregations in Hong Kong are unlike any others in the world, being virtually all women. And they don't just hold services on Sundays.
Right, and to understand why that is, you have to look at the underlying mechanics of Hong Kong's economy.
Okay.
Hong Kong relies heavily on hundreds of thousands of foreign domestic helpers, primarily women migrating from the Philippines and Indonesia.
Right. And the reality of that labor structure is intense. These women are typically working 6 days a week, often living in very tight quarters with their employers.
Exactly.
So when Sunday, or their one designated day off during the week finally arrives, they don't have a traditional home to host friends or just relax in.
Right. They need a space. And that is where the church building transforms. It ceases to be just a place for a 2-hour Sunday worship service and becomes a vital social sanctuary.
Wow.
Yeah. It functions as a living room, a community center, and a support network for thousands of expatriate women navigating a highly demanding labor environment. That is why the building is utilized throughout the entire week, not just on the Sabbath.
But when you combine that intense ongoing local utilization with the fact that this single building is also the administrative hub for a massive global district, eventually a 6-story building is going to hit its absolute physical limits.
Oh, without a doubt.
You simply cannot fit a dozen nations and thousands of highly active local members into 21,000 square feet forever.
No, you can't. Which is why the campus eventually had to decompress. The multipurpose model was a brilliant, necessary solution for the constraints of the 1990s, but as the population surged, the physical space had to adapt.
So the church ended up acquiring land right across the street and constructed a beautiful new meeting house.
Yeah, they expanded.
They effectively pulled the housing facilities, the mission office, and the distribution center out of the temple building and moved them into this new space.
And by moving those day-to-day administrative and Sunday worship functions across the street, they allowed the original building to breathe.
Right.
Functions that were once forced into a single vertical high-rise could finally occupy their own dedicated areas. The Swiss Army knife was finally unpacked into a true, functioning urban campus.
And that decompression paved the way for a massive physical renewal of the temple itself. The Hong Kong China Temple was closed for almost 3 years for extensive renovations. It was only recently rededicated on June 19th, 2022.
Yeah. And a 3-year closure for a regional hub serving members from Mongolia to Indonesia is a massive logistical disruption.
It's huge.
It demonstrates a profound investment in preserving the structural and spiritual integrity of that space for the next century.
And the physical updates sound stunning. The sources mention that the renewed building now features soft lighting that casts a glow on the exterior walls at night.
Sounds gorgeous.
It stands as a brilliantly illuminated beacon against the Kaluntang night sky. But this actually brings us to a fascinating pivot in our sources.
Whoa.
Because when your temple serves a district spanning from Mongolia to Indonesia, a physical visit to that beautifully lit building might be a once-in-a-lifetime event for a family.
That's very true.
So how does the church keep that building relevant to someone living 3,000 miles away?
Well, that is the core challenge of a regional hub.
Hmm.
And it brings us to a crucial directive from President Howard W. Hunter. The sources emphasize that the physical building is ultimately just a vessel. The actual work begins in the intimate, personal preparation of the individuals who enter it. And that preparation doesn't start at the airport, it starts in the living room.
I want to read his exact instructions to parents, actually, because the specificity is really striking.
Go for it.
He said, "Let us share with our children the spiritual feelings we have in the temple, and let us teach them more earnestly and more comfortably the things we can appropriately say about the purposes of the house of the Lord."
Right.
But then he adds this highly practical mandate. He says, "Keep a picture of a temple in your home that your children may see it. Teach them about the purposes of the house of the Lord. Have them plan from their earliest years to go there and to remain worthy of that blessing."
See, this raises an important question about how global institutions maintain personal relevance.
Yeah.
President Hunter isn't just asking adults to grasp complex theology. He is actively instructing parents to use a visual, physical cue, a photograph, to normalize the sacred for a toddler.
So what does this all mean? It means the church is taking this monumental, heavily restricted geopolitical landmark in Hong Kong and purposefully shrinking it down to the size of a framed picture on a mantle in Micronesia or Sri Lanka or Guam.
Exactly.
It shifts the focus completely from the macro logistics of international travel to the micro reality of a family looking at a picture every morning and planning to be there.
Right.
The architecture might be complex, the geopolitical rules might be staggering, but the ultimate goal is incredibly simple and personal.
It creates a psychological tether between the individual and the institution, ensuring that even if the physical building is thousands of miles away, its influence is felt daily.
For you listening, this is why understanding the story of a single building matters so much. It's never just about the vertical glass columns or the square footage.
Oh.
It's about seeing how a global community physically manifests its beliefs while navigating the strict realities of the world around it. I mean, we started with a bold, historic dedication inside the walls of the old Forbidden City in 1921.
Right.
We explored how a severe land shortage in the 1990s forced a church president to sketch an entirely new architectural blueprint on a piece of paper.
Amazing.
We unpacked the anxiety of dedicating a major landmark just months before the historic 1997 handover of power. And we looked at the staggering mechanics of running a spiritual hub that serves dozens of nations while also acting as a weekly sanctuary for thousands of foreign domestic workers in Hong Kong.
It's a lot.
It shows you how history, geography, and theology all collide on a single street.
They really do. And, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on what we've discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We saw how extreme land scarcity in Hong Kong forced the invention of the church's very first multipurpose temple, stacking sacred space, offices, and apartments into a vertical lock system.
Right.
Well, if we look at the trajectory of global urbanization, how might the physical and geographical limitations of future megacities fundamentally reshape the blueprints of all global faiths? As the world continues to urbanize and available land just vanishes, will the sprawling, isolated religious campuses of the past eventually be entirely replaced by these vertical, high-density sanctuaries?
That is a fascinating image to end on. The sanctuary of the future might just be an elevator right away. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Take care. Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.